Καλημέρα σας. Η καλεσμένη μας είναι μία από τις πιο ισχυρές ηθικές φωνές της σύγχρονης Ουκρανίας. Η Oleksandra Matviichuk είναι δικηγόρος ανθρωπίνων δικαιωμάτων, επικεφαλής του Center for Civil Liberties της Ουκρανικής οργάνωσης που τιμήθηκε με το Nobel Ειρήνης το 2022 και μία από τις κεντρικές μορφές της διεθνούς προσπάθειας τεκμηρίωσης εγκλημάτων πολέμου και διεκδίκησης λογοδοσίας για τη ρωσική εισβολή. Μέσα από το έργο της έχει δώσει φωνή σε ανθρώπους που βίωσαν κατοχή, βασανιστήρια, απώλεια και βίαιο εκτοπισμό. Σήμερα έχουμε τη χαρά και την τιμή να τη φιλοξενούμε, έστω και μαγνητοσκοπημένα, σε μία συζήτηση για την Ουκρανία, του τώρα, για τη δικαιοσύνη, για την αντοχή και για το τι σημαίνει να υπερασπίζεσαι την ελευθερία. Είμαι ο δημοσιογράφος Λουκάς Βελιδάκης και τώρα θα αλλάξουμε γλώσσα, θα μιλήσω στα αγγλικά. Oleksandra, welcome to the κλος conference. We are honored to have you with us.
Thank you for your invitation.
Thank you too. More than 4 years into Russian full-scale invasion, how would you describe the reality of life in Ukraine today?
Let me illustrate it with a story. Probably all of you know that it was a very difficult winter for Ukraine because Russia deliberately destroyed the energy grid, the very infrastructure that civilians depend on their survival. Temperature in January and February dropped to minus 25 degrees Celsius. So people in Ukraine were literally freezing in their flats without heating, water, electricity, light. It was difficult. It was a survival question because you have no proper answer to the very practical issue how to warm milk to your newborn baby. And I remember when Russians first time hit energy grid, the photo and video became viral in internet of the ordinary Kiev school teacher. She was wearing red winter hat and warm jacket, and she was sitting on her tiptoe near a metal pole where she placed her computer right outside near a shop where the generator was running and she got access to internet. And right here in a freezing cold, sitting on her tiptoe near a computer, she was given a lecture to her student. And when I looked to these photos and video, I told to myself, Russians came to take everything from us. Our land, our future, our democratic choice, our freedom, the education of our education of our children. And this ordinary Kiev school teacher decided to give them nothing. And something as simple as giving a lecture to her students turned into act of resistance. So we are going through the tough times. I would never wish anyone to go through the war, but we definitely show that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, that ordinary people can have a much greater impact than they can even imagine.
You said, Oleksandra, in the past that we are not victims, we are fighters. After everything Ukrainians have endured, where does that resilience come from? And I would like to ask, how exhausted is Ukrainian society today?
It's difficult to live in the large-scale war, no doubt in it. And that is why people in Ukraine dream about peace. But peace doesn't come when country that was invaded stop fighting. That's not peace, that's occupation. And occupation is horrible. Occupation, it's the same war, just in another form. I know what I'm talking about because I'm documenting war crimes in this war that Russia has launched against Ukraine. I know that occupation is not just changing one state flag to another. Russian occupation means enforced disappearances, torture, rape, denial of your identity, forcible adoption of your own children, filtration camps and mass graves. This is Russian occupation. So no surprise that people in Ukraine dream about peace, but simply don't want to be occupied. And that is why we have no other choice. Putin openly says there is no Ukrainian nation, there is no Ukrainian language, there is no Ukrainian culture. For 12 years, we have been documenting how these words converted in horrible practice in occupied territories, where Russians physically exterminate active local people, mayors, journalists, children writers, teachers, environmentalists, priests, any active people of community, how they banned Ukrainian language and culture, how they destroyed and robbed Ukrainian cultural heritage, and how they take Ukrainian children to Russia, put them in Russian education camps, told them, you're not Ukrainian, you're Russian children, your families, your parents refused from you, and you will be adopted by Russian families who will bring you up as Russians. So we literally have no other choice. To be tired, it's a luxury for us, because if Russia occupied the whole Ukraine, we will cease to exist.
You mentioned the documentation of crimes, and I have found out that your organization has not documented nearly 100,000 instances of alleged war crimes. The question is, how was the nature of the atrocities have changed over time, and what are you seeing now, and what happens to all that documentation?
It's very important to emphasize that all this hell which we face in Ukraine, it's a result of total impunity that Russia enjoyed for decades. Russian troops committing horrible crimes in Chechnya, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Mali, in Libya, in Syria, in other countries of the world. They have never been punished. They believe they can do whatever they want. And that is why Russia uses war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russia attempts to break people resistance and occupy the country by the tool which I call the immense pain on civilian population. And that is why we are documenting something more than just violations of Geneva and Hague Conventions. We are documenting human pain. My colleagues and friends from Russian Human Rights Center Memorial, they published a report. They analyzed Russian tactics in Chechnya, in Syria, in Ukraine, and they told, this is the same war crime playbook. The chain of wars, chain of crimes, and chain of impunity. With our work, we try to break this chain, not just for people in Ukraine, not just for people who have already suffered from Russian war crimes, but in order to prevent a next Russian attack to the next nation.
You've argued passionately, I should say, for a special tribunal for the crime of aggression. A historic agreement was signed with the Council of Europe last June. Where does that process stand today, and what's the next real obstacle?
The process is going. For current moment, approximately 25 countries expressed their will to join to the Special Tribunal on Aggression. And I hope that Greece will join as well. And I would like to explain why it's important. If we want to prevent aggressive wars in the future, we have to punish the states and their leaders who start such wars in present. It sounds like a common sense, but in the whole history of humankind, we have only one such a precedent. It was Nuremberg trial, where Nazi war criminals were tried only after Nazi regime had collapsed. And past century, it was an essential step to establish law and justice. But it's also established like a norma that justice is privileged to winners. That first you have to win the war, and only then you will have a chance for justice. You can ask me, but what about other tribunals like Yugoslavia Tribunal, Rwanda Tribunal, Special Court of Sierra Leone? Why Nuremberg? It's always exceptional. All these tribunals, which you can probably heard, they persecuted people because they killed each other not according to the norms of international humanitarian law. So for the whole history of humankind, we have only one such precedent. It was Nuremberg. But it was in past century. We live in new one. We must move further. We must make justice independent on the fact when and how the war will end. We cannot wait. We must establish a special tribunal on aggression now and hold Putin and non-political leadership and high military command of the Russian state accountable.
Oleksandra, I have to ask you, and actually I have to comment on one of the risks of a long war is normalization. People abroad, like in Greece too, begin to look away, government, shift priorities. There is an ongoing war in Iran too. Public attention fades. How can Ukraine maintain the moral and political attention of the West?
It's very natural. It's very human. But I'm confident that Greece and other European countries, they have no luxury to be tired of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, because they will be the next target. Putin started large-scale war not because he wanted to occupy just another piece of Ukrainian land. It's very naive to think that Russia has lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers just to occupy Avdiivka or Bakhmut, tiny Ukrainian cities that majority of Russians couldn't even find on the map. Putin started large-scale war because he wanted to destroy and to occupy the whole Ukraine and move further. He sees Ukraine as a bridge to Europe. His logic is historical. He dreams about his legacy. He wants to forcibly restore Russian Empire. And that is why people in Greece and other European countries, they are safe only because Ukrainians are still resisting and don't let the Russian army to move further. And in this regard, support of Ukraine, it's not a charity. Ukraine is not a beneficiary of European support. Ukraine is an integral part and a strong contributor to European collective security.
Do you genuinely believe Vladimir Putin and Russia's leadership could one day face justice?
I work with people who have gone through the hell. And I know for sure that these people need to restore not just their broken lives, broken families, broken vision of the future, but their broken belief that justice is possible, even though delayed in time. And I myself, my team, and a lot of other people in Ukraine and abroad are trying hard to make justice happen. And I know that future is not just unclear, it's also not pre-written. This means that we all have a chance with our efforts to create future with justice.
Is there any story, a person you've met in those years that continues to stay with you and captures better than any statistics what this war really means?
Probably I will share the story of Ukrainian philosopher and scientist Igor Kozlovsky. He is originally from Donetsk. He spent 700 days in Russian captivity. I interviewed him. Before that, I interviewed hundreds of people who survived Russian captivity, men and women. They told me how they were beaten, raped, smashed into wooden boxes, their fingers were cut, their nails were torn away, their nails were drilled, they were electrically shocked through their genitalia. One woman told me how her eye was dragged out with a spoon. So it was little that could surprise me. But Professor Igor Kozlovsky mentioned a tale which was insignificant to the evidence base, but this detail impressed me deeply. He described how he was kept in solitary confinement in tiny cell in basement with no window, no light, no fresh air. It was difficult for him even to breathe. Sewage flows on the dirty floor, and through the opening of the sewage, rats were crawling down. And this detail that struck me. This well-known professor in my country told me how he gave lectures on philosophy to these rats. just in order to hear a sound of human voice, because he was kept alone for months and months. And legally, Igor Kozlovsky was victim because he was abducted, detained in unhuman conditions. He was tortured so severely that he had to relearn how to walk again. But he told me that all his experience, it's not a reason for him to treat himself and experience himself as victim. Because the basis of our existence is dignity, not victimhood. And dignity is action. And why I'll tell this story? Because it's remind all of us, we are not hostages of these circumstances. We are participants of this historical process. And dignity provides us strength and courage to continue our fight, even in unbearable conditions.
Alexandra, we have really little time left, so I have a last question for you. When this war eventually ends, whenever that day comes, what kind of Ukraine do you hope emerges from this trauma, and what do you personally hope to reclaim in your own life?
I hope that Ukraine will succeed with our historical goal and we return to European civilized dimension, that we will become a part of European Union, because for people in Ukraine, it's a value choice, first of all. And for myself, I hope that I would manage to return peaceful mornings. It's very simple joy, peaceful mornings, when you can drink coffee, read books, newspapers, pet your cats. You're not hurry to run someone, to save someone. I hope that peaceful mornings in my country in future, in near future, will be possible.
I hope the same thing too. Oleksandra Matviichuk, thank you very much. It was an honor for us.
The honor is mine. Thank you for this opportunity.